Hello and welcome to episode 11 of Leadership Conversations with Krishna. And today I'm pleased to be joined by Mr. Alok Agrawal. Alok is the co founder for AI for India and formerly held roles and positions such as board member for Prasar Bharati, Group CEO for Network 18 Media and Investments, and CEO at Z Media Corporation Limited. Welcome, Mr. Alok.
Thanks, Krishna. Nice to meet you.
Just jumping straight in, right? I'm curious, what is AI for India and what prompted you to start it?
Okay, so we think of ourselves as an enabling ecosystem, right? So we started this as a conversation among some friends um, about 2 years ago when the entire AI hype was taking off. And one of the things which has always bothered me and some of the others, like-minded people, is the fact that India has typically been late to all technology-related developments, right? Our adoption of technology curves is a little slow. However, we also have the ability to leapfrog some of the initial developments and so on, right? So right from the telecom days to the acceptance of internet to digital technology and so on, we have been late to the party, but have been able to adopt it subsequently fairly well. But in AI, we kind of felt that one, the pace of development is going to be extremely fast. Uh, Two, you can't afford to miss out because this is a technology which is transformative and it's likely to make the difference between successful nations and not so successful nations. Right. And we have this great ambition as set out by the Prime Minister to be Viksit Bharat. And therefore, technology, especially AI associated technologies, will play a big role in us getting there. The fact that we have limited resources means we also need to leverage such technologies to make the most of our limited resources. Um, and finally, we also felt that this is a domain which is not the purview of one company or just a few companies, etc., but it requires collaboration amongst various parties, building the stack at multiple levels, and also equal participation of the end users, whether it's enterprise, users like you and me, civic bodies, and even the government. Right? So everybody has a role to play. And therefore, our AI for India effort is to bring all these parties together into one common ecosystem, understand the challenges, facilitate conversations between various parties, and a collaborative effort towards development of AI solutions which are built in India for problems of India. And so that's really what we are working on.
No, that's some great points there, right? Before we jump into, you talked a lot about the ecosystem and kind of growing that. Now, before we jump into different aspects that make the ecosystem, I wanted to understand from you, how do you look at, where do you think India is currently in the AI race? Do you think we're in the middle, we're on top? Where
I
do you
think
see?
we are still at a pretty early stage, right? Uh, I mean, what we now understand is that a lot of very high-tech AI development started way back in 2015, 2016, or even before that. Google had the DeepMind project way back in 2012. We didn't have any such projects going on, right? And a lot of effort has started only after the big launch of ChatGPT and which shook the world. Uh, while people were using in their technology development some aspects of AI, but we were not developing AI solutions per se, right? And it's important to understand that. So for many years, for the last 15 years or so, we've been seeing some applications of machine learning in on almost all the applications that we use frequently, right from Google to Maps to Uber to all kinds of services. But it's just that generative AI brought AI front and center. It gave us the power to go and do whatever we want with it, right? And it's progressing rapidly from there on. So that's an area where we were doing very little work, and therefore we are starting out now. But the really good thing is that I think in the last 12 months or so, we are catching up rapidly. The government has been very, very supportive of this. So they have been able to create a pool of 50,000 GPUs, which are available to AI developers all across India. We have already got two foundational models which have been launched, Sarvam and Bharat Gen. And there are numerous other AI applications which are coming up. And overall, optimism around adoption of AI amongst users is also very high. So whether we look at enterprise, whether we look at students, whether we look at governments, there is optimism and people are exploring, but there are still lots of work to be done. There are gaps, there are challenges to be addressed, etc.
No, that's great to learn about, the progress and also the initiatives that the government is also pushing, right? It's one very important aspect in the AI ecosystem is data. And I know
Right,
one of your personal initiatives for AI for India is something called Data Daan. Can you tell us
right.
what Data Daan is all about, and why did you feel the need for such a thing?
Okay, so when we first set out on our journey, and like I said, our entire effort was to bring to enable an ecosystem by bringing the various players together. And as soon as we started talking to the researchers, the developers, the startups, the first thing they said is we want to develop for India, but we don't have India specific data. Simultaneously, and there is a huge amount of data required to train AI models, as you well. Simultaneously, it also started becoming clear as we started using the AI models coming out from the West was that they were trained on very little data from India. So they didn't have the right cultural context. They did not really cater to our linguistic diversity extremely well. Uh, they didn't understand our history very well, and so on. And all that is important to be able to create a sovereign model, the model which is most relevant to India. Also, a lot of this data was contaminated. There was bias against India for various reasons and so on, because most of the data which was available was from the internet and largely developed in the Western world. Um, so it did not reflect data from our Indian languages and so on, various regions. Um, so that was the first requirement which came up, that one, to make India specific models, we need India specific data sets um, across text, images, audio, video, all kinds of formats. Secondly, when we start talking to industry, the enterprise applications, uh, you need to create models specific to that industry in the environment of our country, right? Or specific to that company. And therefore, there is a lot of proprietary data which needs to be used. And therefore, that is also a requirement that unless I understand and understand the data from that particular industry, you can't build an effective model for enterprise. So recognizing all this, we kind of came upon this thing saying, can we create an initiative where we encourage people to come forth and pledge whatever data, and here we are very clear that we want to follow the guidelines laid down under DPDP. So there will be no private data which will be exposed. We want to adhere to the copyright laws of the nation, etc. And it will be by consent. So data owners will consent to pledge their data, and they will make it available in the way they want. So we are not a data repository. Now, the government of India under India AI mission has started something called AI Coach, where they are even requesting data owners to come and post their data, which is very good. And we are working towards enabling platforms like AI Coach. But our whole idea is to create awareness for the importance of data, encourage data owners to come forth and offer their data for development of AI models for the benefit of India.
That's a fabulous initiative. Just to understand this further, now who can be a data owner in this case, right? Just for the benefit of our viewers, is it can a common person also be a data owner? Or is it mostly going to be corporates or business houses or uh,
So actually, everybody is a data owner. We all generate huge amounts of data, or we are sitting on data. we are, without really understanding it, giving away a lot of our data when we use any of the digital platforms, whether it's social media, whether through our search activity. Even while we are moving and using Google Maps, we are sharing a lot of data, and so on. Uh, there are health records, our writings, the content that we create, etc. So there is a fair amount of data each individual has, and all that put together. So by itself, that data may not be enough for a model to um, train itself and build something meaningful. But when you combine the collective power of this individual data for a large number of people, then you have a very rich base to work with. Uh, on top of that, all kinds of organizations are sitting on a lot of data, right? Every enterprise, government sits on a lot of data, hospitals, schools, colleges, etc. They all have a lot of content, and in this case, we have to also, in the AI context, people are understanding data differently, right? So in the traditional sense, data used to be structured data. So it would be basically numeric kind of data or very definitive data sets. Whereas in the AI context, anything in life is data, right? So any image, any conversation like this, any audio input, any video input, any kind of writing is all data. And in fact, that is where LLMs, the transformers technology really excels, where it is able to work with unstructured data and provide a lot of meaning to it, right? So, therefore, all kinds of inputs is welcome.
That's really good to hear, and it's also for the viewers watching, it's good to know that as a common Indian, be it an individual or a business house, you can play a part in the growth of the AI ecosystem, right? Even if you are not a techie, you can at least play your part in giving data.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, let me give you a very good example. For example, uh, somebody who's no more, right? They would have all their historical healthcare records. So there is no more privacy because the person is not there anymore. But that data could be extremely useful for somebody developing healthcare related AI models, right? Whether it's images through the X-rays, MRIs, etc., or diagnostics, other tests, and so on. So all that can be very useful and help us build really powerful models. So just start with that. You don't want to disclose your personal healthcare information. It could be from a family member who's no more, which could be donated away. A bit like, Prime Minister talked about organ donation. Why not data donation for people who are not there? So that's just one tiny example. And I would just make a small plug here where I say, like, if you're interested, go to datadaan.org and make your pledge.
No, that's good to know, and that was a really good example there. As you talked a lot about building our own ecosystem and then building a sovereign model. Should we build a sovereign model, or are we already building one?
Okay, so in fact, about a year and a half back, there was a bit of a controversy. There were some leading voices which said that it costs too much to build a sovereign model. We should not be building foundational models, and we should just focus on applications. So I highlighted earlier, some of the problems with the existing models is the fact that data which has been used to train these models are biased. Uh, they don't have the right cultural context, they don't understand our diversity, etc. And therefore, these models will not necessarily be suitable for the environment, Indian environment. But what is really heartening to see is, like I said, two models have already been launched, and they're constantly working on improving and scaling up these models and adding more functionality. And I understand that under the India AI mission, they had asked for different projects which are working on foundational models. There are 44 such models which have applied, right? So at the foundational level itself, forget the applications. There is a lot of determination amongst the developers to develop sovereign models for India. There are other aspects as well, so not just the data bias, cultural context, diversity issues. but also the fact that we need to think of models which are cheaper to train and run. We need models uh, which are extremely frugal in the way they work so that they could run on even the small devices. You don't need very high-end devices. Lots of parts of India may not have good connectivity, especially when you go to rural areas. People may not have the right bandwidth and so on. So we also need models which could run on handheld phones, on low-end laptops, and so on. And therefore, all that is part of the conversation and efforts that we are building, bringing those players who can enable uh, deployment of such models on edge devices.
That's fabulous, right? As I'd like to jump a little bit into the deeper aspects of AI and India's AI ecosystem, and aspects like academia, industry, talent, that is people, and then also government. So starting with academics, right? And this is a very crucial player in the ecosystem of AI. How do you see the role of academia nurturing this ecosystem? And there's always been this thought in India that we don't spend enough on research, and spend in the sense not just money but even time. How do we change that habit, and how do we encourage our students to start thinking about research and rewarding them for that kind of thinking?
Okay, so that's a very good question, and very important aspect to understand, which I think some people missed, and I think a lot more appreciation of that is coming up now, which is the fact that so we got used to the previous startup way, and we saw highly effective startups coming up, and there was good momentum, etc. And we have seen some of them become really giant corporations in India over the last 10, 12 years. Um, but I think there's a big difference. Most of the startups which started off in the previous era, starting say 2010, were really applications. They were business applications built on top of technology which was already existing and well proven. Right? And what needed to be built on top was business models, operational areas like logistics, customer acquisition, what have you, right? Um, so they were really solving business related problems using existing technologies by way of these smart technology based products. In AI, it's still at a nascent stage. There is still a lot of fundamental work which is being done, which needs to be done. While we keep getting awed by the progress AI is making and what are the capabilities it has, and being able to generate an 8-second video clip with just a prompt and things like those. But at the same time, we constantly keep realizing new challenges with the existing AI models. And how, therefore, there has to be constant effort on making these models more efficient, making them more accurate. Accuracy is a big thing, and especially if you start looking at critical applications, then you have no leeway, right? When you're looking at healthcare applications, you have no leeway. When you're looking at defense applications, space applications, etc., you need to be almost 100% accurate, right? Because even a small um, uh, error can lead to disastrous consequences. Plus, we have to also understand that now, when you're running a prompt, an AI model is not giving you output after one run. It's using a chain of thought process, right? So, which is what is called reasoning, and therefore, it's iterating on the first output, evaluating that second output, etc. Now, imagine if there was even a 5% error in each layer of this reasoning, and you use 6 or 7 layers. After 6 or 7 layers, you're down to 60% accuracy, right? So accuracy becomes an important area, and scaling up currently. Scale up laws are getting kind of stretched, and therefore, beyond a point, there is a lot of debate on whether you can continue to scale up the models as is. Is there additional returns on the investment which is being made, etc.? And we're running out of data. We are soon going to run out of all human generated data. And Therefore, there will be need to constantly generate synthetic data. Uh, and that synthetic data will be generated from these AI models. Now, how does that become more effective? So there are lots of questions unanswered, right? And added to that, like I keep saying, in India, we need to be more efficient. We need to be able to cater to our vast diversity of population. It needs to be frugal so that it is affordable by everyone. And we need to have the right applications, right, for you and I to use in our daily lives, and not just us, but there needs to be application which a farmer can use, a rural housewife can use, and so on. So that requires constant thought and working, and there is huge amount of research opportunity there.
Yeah, and you rightly pointed out, right? There's great research opportunity, and also it should ultimately benefit the end user, and and that is where the industry can play a role, right? Kind of bringing it to the end user. From an industry perspective, where do you see AI application? Where do you think that they can play? Which areas or sectors they can play a much larger role? And I'm just kind of thinking back of a decade or so back, and India has been pretty successful with certain digital initiatives, right? If you see Aadhaar, for example, and Jan Dhan, it has actually benefited the common man, in terms of making their life better through bank account or direct benefit transfer, whatever. Like in this case, with the help, where do you see AI applications directly benefiting the common man through the industry?
Okay, again, very interesting. So, there was recently, a couple of months back, a global survey done by Deloitte on industry adaptation of AI. And India was number one, or the leading country in industry adoption of AI, right? So that is one kind of fact. People are gung-ho and optimistic. But when we start talking to startups or the AI developers and AI companies, they say we, we are facing a huge problem breaking beyond POC, right? So every company is saying, okay, show me a POC, but how do we go beyond that? And this was exactly one of the conversations we had during our recent AI for India summit at Bangalore. So there is a gap. There is a gap between what the industry is really looking for and needs, and what the developers are working on. So that application layer needs to be developed, and that gap needs to be bridged. Uh, Traditionally, Indian industry, Indian enterprises have not really participated in the R&D process. Um, right, so the R&D is confined only to academic institutions in our country. There is very few independent research labs, and because industry is not participating, that is one of the reasons why we have lagged in fundamental research and development in our country, because it becomes too overwhelming for the educational institutions, who typically don't have the kind of resources which are required to develop technologies like this. Now, so it is quite important, and this was another fact which was brought out by uh, the speakers at our summit 2 weeks ago. The fact that industry needs to participate in the development process, right? So they can't just be users of the output of this, because AI, like I keep saying, it's still a nascent technology. How and where it's going to go, what parts of our lives is it really going to impact, what are the parts which today we are excited about but will be no-go areas because they're not really making a difference to our lives, are things which need to be worked out. And a lot of that understanding is something which industry will bring, right? In terms of, because industry understands consumer behavior. They understand personas within the company. What do different individuals do? They understand processes of working within an organization. But the end application of AI solutions is going to be within those companies to improve processes, bring down people's workloads, bring more efficiency, improve the quality of products which are coming out, bring down costs, etc., etc. That's what will make things grow. So it requires close industry participation, and in many cases, industry is very protective of the data they have. They will need to make a beginning by first sharing two things: their data and their use cases. Right. This is what I really need. Um, what I find in my conversations with various CEOs across industries and companies is that the first thing they're really looking for is how to improve customer interaction, right? Now, any large company is dealing with hundreds of thousands, millions of customers, etc. They would like to understand their customer better, have a closer relationship with the customers, be able to customize their offerings to their customers, have a more one-to-one uh, relationship with them, but which is currently not possible it's, because you can't have so many people within the company. And in any case, when you rely on individuals, every individual has their own way of representing the company, despite all the training that you provide them. So that's one area where industry is really keen on looking at developing a relationship, closer relationship with their customer, whether it is from a marketing perspective, a sales funnel perspective, after sales, customer satisfaction perspective. Similarly, better relationships with their other stakeholders, their investors, their vendors, etc. And there is a lot of role to play there. And within the organizations, the understanding operations, easing out processes so that drudgery of work can come down, uh, providing better, employee motivation and other aspects. And so once we start breaking down, there can be thousands and thousands of use cases which will emerge from the industry.
Yeah, absolutely right. And you touched upon an important aspect that historically, the industry has not really participated so much, in the R&D. Another aspect, of the industry is also the startup ecosystem, right? And an important debate that is now happening in India is that while there is a lot of startup ideas and talent in India as compared to the Western world, where we actually lack is the ability to take risks and capital, and industry also has a role to play in that. And kind of tying together both your points, like R&D, the industry not investing so much in R&D, and then startup ecosystem also being dried of funds or capital. And I also read your one of your posts on LinkedIn where you mentioned about how the investor ecosystem can do a lot more for uh, the startups back here in India. What do you think can change to kind of further the ecosystem? Is it just a matter of taking more risks? What additional points can we do?
So I think if across the ecosystem, whether it is users, industry, whether it is investors, whether it is startups, whether it is R&D framework within academia, etc., and also the government, if there is deep realization, stop realization that one, this is a field with huge opportunity, immense opportunity. The benefits of AI will continue to unfold, right? And therefore, it will continue to impact all our lives, and it will continue to therefore accelerate our whole economic growth uh, in various, and therefore improve the lives of people by doing various things all at the same time. Um, and at the same time, we need to be really fearful that if we don't do it, we are going to be left behind, far behind countries which are really adopting it and investing in it, right? So while the stakes have really gone up, especially if you see all the announcements in the last few months, the kind of stakes which are going into AI development and building the entire ecosystem is immense, right? People are talking really ginormous numbers, but we cannot be out of it. And we cannot just be a consuming nation, so to say, that we wait for the perfect solution to come out, and then we say, okay, we will go and adopt it, etc. Because by the time it comes out, A, it may be too expensive. B, we are seeing with more and more geopolitical risk coming up that people may start putting gates and providing you gated access to some of these technologies, because it's going to make the difference between the really powerful countries and not so powerful ones, right? So if we truly believe in the opportunity and we are really fearful of missing out, right, then I think we will develop enough risk appetite. The problem is that by and large in India, we don't have that kind of risk appetite, rightfully, because we have limited resources, right? Our GDP per capita is a tiny fraction of the developed nations. And to get to their level will take us huge amounts of effort. And to raise that level of resources is not easy for our country, right? So we have access to some natural resources, but we are constrained in many of these things. Energy, for example, is largely imported by a country like ours. In a lot of technology areas, we are still dependent on, um, other countries around the world and so on. So unless that strong belief comes that I am doing this for my future and my country's future, uh, I see the big opportunity. We are going to lose out, and therefore let's take that risk. And I am really positive and convinced, and that is why we are doing this. We are doing this as a non-profit, devoting all our time and forwarding that mission and the ecosystem. That unless we do this and take that risk, we are not going to go forward, and we'll definitely get very high returns if we take that risk.
Yeah, absolutely right. And it's like I said, it's all about having that belief and recognizing that this opportunity, and if we seize this, will give us great results. Another very important aspect in, as we build products and grow in the AI ecosystem is people. And this is actually one of my
Mm.
um, very favorite topics, right? And so what do you think that we should do to retain the best talent in India? And I think it's kind of a open secret now that a lot of our talent, is building for other countries, and some of our brightest minds we do lose every year, to other countries. What can we do to kind of nurture and keep that talent here in India?
Um, you know, I have uh, observed a lot of people who, peers, colleagues, etc., who started here or who studied with me and who've gone to the US or Europe or some of the other markets, etc. And the common perception is people say, oh, more money, better lifestyle. That's why people go. The true research minded people are not so driven by money or better lifestyle, right? They are driven by what they can really do, how they can make a difference, right? So they need access to the right problem statements. They need the freedom to be able to work in those areas. They need an environment which encourages them to perform in a completely risk-free manner, right? And of course, they need access to investments in pursuing whatever they are pursuing. Because research, one of the things they have to understand is when you're doing core fundamental research, it takes longer. The gestation period is longer. And I mean, lots of people have said that. So you have to have that patience as well. Right? If an investor wants returns in 3 years and wants to IPO in 5 years, then this is not a field which is likely to provide that. But at the same time, we are seeing examples of companies scaling from 0 to 100 million ARR in 6 months, right? So that is the power of AI as well. So as far as the talent is concerned, if you provide them the right environment to challenge their cerebral power, they will work in that environment, right? Um, there are lots of bright kids I find these days who are wanting to work in the social sector. Why do they want to work in the social sector? Because they want to solve the problem of the masses, people who are really, who don't have anything in their lives. And therefore, for that, they're working on those areas. And I see many who are giving up, very flourishing careers in the US and so on, and coming back and working in the social sector in our country. So, mm, I mean, there is no dearth of talent we have. Even if some percentage gets lured and goes to the US or Europe or some of the other markets, we still have enough. We just need to provide the right environment to them. We need to channelize their hunger, right? And channelize their cerebral power, give them the right environment, and you'll be amazed at what they can do.
That is a fascinating perspective, right? Give, the right problem statement and freedom. That was great to hear. I, you know, I have another kind of theory, right? Now, there are countries across the world that have immigration programs. US, Europe, UAE also, has talent programs attracting the best minds, and then we see people going there. Should India also have an immigration program where you attract the bright minds from other countries, and especially like global South countries, right? Who might not have as much of a AI or tech ecosystem as we do. And I'm thinking, Central Asia, Middle East, Africa, even, some of the Asian countries also. Should we why can't we? I'm just kind of thinking very in simple terms. Why can't we have the most smartest Sri Lankan come and develop in India, or the smartest person from Uzbekistan come and develop in India?
Um, okay, so I mean, two ways of looking at it. Now, some people will argue that we have enough talent in our country. They are themselves not gainfully employed or not getting enough opportunities. We don't have the investments or the resources to support them. Why should we invite others here? Um, so that is one part of the argument. I don't necessarily subscribe to it. I think we should be open enough to be able to attract all kinds of talents from anywhere. Um, our colleges do have a program. So all our IITs, other universities, etc., have a quota for foreign students, and some of the brightest minds from there come and studies in these institutions. So we do get people from the global south coming and studying here, and sometimes working there. And in many cases, you don't even need to have them physically here. Uh, you can just form uh, teams, online teams, and they could be living wherever they are and still working on a project which is coming out of India. So definitely that's an opportunity we must explore. Not only that, it will enrich us, right? These are all so not just sources of talent, but these are also potential markets for solutions built out of India. The problems we are facing with developed AI solutions, for example, is the same problem all African countries have. All Southeast Asian countries have. All countries of the global South will have the same issue with that because it does not cater to their diversity. It does not have relevant data from there. This thing it will have bias against those countries and so on. It's not frugal enough, efficient enough, and so on. And however, we will be enriched from experiences. Not all the experiences we have in India can map what's happening in Congo or in Sri Lanka, etc. There'll be some uniqueness about their markets as well. So it will help us develop those. And we have seen a great example here. Our UPI is, for example, now finding more and more favor with countries of the global south because it is the most efficient payment system in the world, better than anything which exists in the Western world.
Oh, well said, right? And our UPI also recently completed a milestone in kind of the most transactions per day, even beating Visa, right? So we have a
Absolutely.
great example there. Yeah. I'd like to, kind of going into the end of the podcast, I'd like to focus a little bit on government and geopolitics because right now there's no summit, be it G7, BRICS, whatever of those kind, where AI is not kind of on the agenda of world leaders, right? Now, coming to first government and then more geopolitically, recently Indian government released a scheme allocating about 1 lakh crore called the RDI scheme, kind of wanting to boost investment in certain sunrise sectors and encouraging private players to play a more role. Do you see that nurturing the deep tech ecosystem?
So I think this scheme is going to be a game changer. And so there are two things here to understand. One, AI development is not just development in computer technology or data sciences, but it's a lot more because there are lots of related fields which need to come together. You need to have better semiconductors. You need to have access to them. It consumes a lot of power, so you need to immediately start looking at power supply issues, and you need to be ready for all the power that AI is going to consume going forward over the next 10, 20 years. Um, you need to start looking at new kinds of devices which will be designed for the future of AI and how they will work and so on. Um, Therefore, related all the chemistry which goes into building the semiconductors into new forms of batteries, etc. So there are lots of related technologies which are required, and at the same time, because of application of this. Um, you will see emergence of robots, autonomous cars, more defense equipment, which is all autonomous and smarter, driven by AI and so on, which requires parallelly development of those related technologies, right, in those particular areas. So that is where this fund is really visionary in the way that is going to support all kinds of R&D development and not be focused in just one area saying, okay, we will do only AI development and so on. And there is enough support. And I think a fact a lot of people miss is the government has already announced the India AI mission, and there's already 20,000 crores behind it just for the development of AI related technologies in the country, right? So right from providing GPUs to providing funding for foundational models to uh, AI course I talked about, etc. They have identified 7 different pillars. Now, no other country has an equivalent of an India AI mission. Right. China does provide a lot of support, government support to developments, but the the program is not as well structured as what is under the India mission. I have not seen any other country announce a $13 billion investment into technology development in the country, right? Which is what 1 lakh crore translates. So I mean, the government is making all the right moves. It has clearly a very open and ambitious policy towards development of technology in the country. Before that, there have been other steps like One Nation, One Subscription, which provides access to every student, access to all the journals in the world, which is again another game changer. So a lot of these are, frontier kind of moves from a government perspective. Uh, Now it depends entirely on the rest of the ecosystem players to dive in and say, I will play my part. This is how we will partner this effort. Industry needs to come in and say, okay, this is how I will match the funding which the government is providing. Academia needs to perk up and start putting more attention towards R&D. And apart from the academic focus that they have, startups need to start taking more risks and uh, putting their credibility online to develop new solutions. And of course, the investors need to, they're seeing all the signs, and therefore they need to back it with uh, their money.
Yeah, no, that is great to hear, right? The Indian government is already doing so much, and the government can only do so much, right? It can build the right ecosystem, create the conditions, but then the other players, like you mentioned, academia, industry, investors also have to kind of play their role, right? And and based on whatever you've said so far, it looks like the future is definitely positive and bright. You touched a little bit on geopolitics in the earlier part of our conversation, right? But viewers would also be interested to know, there's AI is on the agenda for all world leaders, right? But is in other we've seen other aspects like rare earth and in certain cases financial system that sometimes it can be weaponized against other countries, right? With the way things are going and the importance of AI in the future, is AI also likely to be weaponized in the near future? And is that a reason for us, I mean, for India to further our growth on self-sufficiency?
I 100% believe that. It's going to become a geopolitical differentiator. It's likely to get weaponized, most likely to get weaponized, definitely gated, and therefore you will we are already seeing uh, enough proof points, right? So US, for example, is controlling the kind of chips which can go into China or not go into China. Um, they're now wary of how the data is flowing and therefore which apps to ban and which to allow in each other's countries, etc. Um, and once the models start coming out, the applications start coming out. If we continue to rely on the foundational models built in the US, housed in the US, running off a cloud in the US, um, I mean, at any given point in time, if there is a geopolitical shift and there is some kind of tension, like we had recently during Operation Sindoor, Big Daddy can always decide, that no, I don't like this, and therefore I will cut off the AI access to the country. And what happens, if all your systems are running on AI models built and housed in the US? So there is huge need for nations to, especially large countries and ambitious country like India, be soon going to be number three, and we want to challenge the number one and number two over the next 25 years, right? So, uh, how are we going to get there if we are dependent on technology coming from these countries? And today we are by and large dependent on almost all technologies coming from these countries. So we have to become self-reliant. It's not just about producing products in India, but it's about owning the fundamental technologies in India at a sovereign level. And that's going to be important. And the applications will flow into almost everything that we have because AI supremacy will translate to armament supremacy, right? And the person who has a combination of AI and armament supremacy will rule the world.
No, that's very well said, right? And the need to counter misinformation is very important. And I think you mentioned Operation Sindoor, and we did see a lot of misinformation out there with respect to the operation also. So that's another reason that we should kind of build on self-sufficient AI. Jumping, kind of going to the conclusion of our podcast, right? At a personal level, I wanted to understand how you are looking at, the near future and future. What is it that excites you the most as you go along this journey of AI for India and data? Daan?
So, like I said earlier, right, we are highly optimistic and hopeful that AI will bring transformational impact. And this is, I look at it like, electricity. Can you imagine a world without electricity today, right? The size of the global economy will be only a tiny fraction of what it is right now. And there are more and more applications of electricity which keep coming up all the time, right? So internet, digital technology, AI, etc., all built on top of electricity. Without electricity, none of these would exist, right? So people are constantly, and therefore there is almost entirely infinite potential of electricity. The same will be true for AI, right? We're just starting out. There will be more and more and more applications. It will continue to grow in its capabilities. In terms of whether you're measuring the intelligence level of these things, there are people who are saying that AI will become as smart as 10,000 times human intelligence, 100,000 times human intelligence, and so on. All that will have transformative impact eventually on the way we live, the way our economies are, and so on. Right. And therefore, related to that will also be the fact that while people keep fearing job losses, but there'll be so many more opportunities coming up, so many more, uh, uh, threads of consumption which will continue to open up, that people will have new things to do and new careers to pursue and new ways to earn money. And there will be even more affluent people than ever, right, going forward. But we all need to participate in this. This is not something which can be left to just a few people, because if we leave it to a few people, then only those few people will benefit. So this is something which is, for the first time, there is this technology which can truly make us superhumans, right? If a human works along with artificial intelligence, they can do so much more than what they were earlier capable of doing through their abilities, through the resources available to them, etc. And if we start using this in various ways, then we can all really start producing that much more output. And then cumulatively for a country, it becomes so much more. So I think humanity is really going to be on a hockey stick uh, by leveraging and using this technology. Opportunities will continue to grow, and we can all be part of that, provided we approach it with a positive perspective and put in our contribution in whichever way we can. Whether it is um, our ability to do research, our ability to provide use cases, our ability to create applications, our ability to just use it in the ways we want, our ability to contribute data, for example, to this movement, um, and so on.
Very rightfully put. And, on that positive note, I'd like to thank you for your time today and your fascinating insights. And also, I think the biggest conclusion is that we have a great opportunity in front of us, and each one of us, can play a role in nurturing that opportunity. Thank you once again, Mr. Alok, for your time today.
Thanks, Krishna. All the best.